why I do what I do goes back, way back, 33 years back. But it even goes further back. When I was a student, since I've had all my education in India, born and brought up in India, in a middle-class Christian home, I was very challenged by the missionaries that came during those times to teach us the very fact that we can go up to temperatures of 48 degrees Celsius. It amazed me how they left their comfort zones. I'd never been overseas, but I had an imagination that they must be having a lot of cool homes. But as I grew older and I graduated from medical school and I went to work, I worked for the very elite. There was nothing that I lacked because I was working for the elite. But there was something that was not really satisfying in what I was doing. I was married, had a son. At that time, he was just about 5 years of age. And suddenly one night, I delivered a patient. She turned to me and said, "Dr. David, have you ever worked with the poor where there's nothing?" I said, "What would a gynecologist do where there's nothing?" And she said, "Oh," and the thought stuck like a little something, like a dot in my brain, and I just didn't know, I didn't feel quite at ease. I went back, shared the whole thing with my parents and my husband, who thought it was a very foolish idea. What are you going to do where there's nothing? I mean, amazing. But a few weeks later, she came back for her postnatal check, and she gave me a little address. And sure enough, I was one who used to pray for God's leading. And I thought working in the church environment was enough of doing God's work. And I was teaching Sunday school at church at that time, and I thought it was really good. I'm working, I'm earning, but I'm also doing God's work. But God had other plans for me, I think. And so I convinced my husband, and we went down to our head office in Bangalore, known as the X group of institutions. And the little address I got was a gentleman who lived in New Zealand. And the name of the organization was International Needs. I knew nothing about it, but when I went there, I was equally challenged because they worked in the heart of nowhere. It was just forest all around and one huge room where the children came, studied, ate, slept, and I thought, great. So the organization head challenged me and said, "Would you like to take up this work to the north of India?" And without consulting anyone, as if it was coming from the Lord, I said yes. I didn't ask him what would the payment be. But the second question, he said, "Would you be able to work with very little money since you've been working with the elite?" So I said, yes, any amount, but I want to do this. "Why do you want to do it?" he said. I said, "Because it gives me peace in the heart to work, do something for the women who are struggling. I've worked enough for the very rich, and I felt that it didn't give me very good feeling within me." And so that's how the work started. I brought it up when I came up, and I was terribly disappointed because I myself didn't know how I'm going to set it up. I was used to working in a hospital environment, but here I had to reason and plan. And so all that I got was a little accommodation from my mother and father-in-law, who opened their home and said, "Anything for God's work." And when I did open the home, I had no patients. The reason being, nobody knew me in this new city. But fortunately, I met another doctor who needed help for a night job in a Catholic hospital. And so they said, "Shireen, if you're not doing anything in the day, how about coming to work in the hospital at night?" So I did emergency calls at night. Just then, the organization in Bangalore, which is the head office, said International Needs in Australia has a person who's a nurse and she wants to come to have a stint in India. Would you like to take her up in North India? I said yes. And so began this journey. So God put Anne Knowles was her name, and I'm still very much in touch with her. And she went back very challenged because unfortunately 8 months later Mrs. Gandhi, our Prime Minister, got assassinated and she had to leave the country and she never got a visa to come back. But she went to work in Arnhem Land because she wanted to accept a challenge, only because she saw the poverty and the immense difficulties that a woman was facing in India at that time. The journey started in 1984. So I have been linked with International Needs Australia since 1984. Many people ask me, how many organizations have been you working with? And when I say one, they said, oh, the reason is they have been so faithfully standing with me that I feel that that's part of the family that is linked with me. I believe that the index of development of a country is dependent on the health of an individual. And education is the key to all progress and achievement. And that was why I thought, being a doctor, I would only be recognized through the health programs that I did. I thought my career is all that I can give into. But I realized years later that you make a life with what you get. You make your career with what you get, rather. I said it the other way around. You make a career with what you get, but you make a life with what you give. And that's how I've kept my passion and my vision in one direction. There have been many challenges to work for the woman, to bring her to a stage when she's independent, because values like human dignity, identity, and self-confidence are the key things that we have incorporated in this program. India is a patriarchal society, and a woman is considered to be just a piece of any furniture in the home if she's not educated. Now, there's a great contrast in India between the urban and the rural India. I work in the state of Uttar Pradesh, where there are 199 million people. Impossible to imagine. And the city I live in is the city of Allahabad in Uttar Pradesh, which has 4 million people. It's a very important city because 5 of our prime ministers hailed from this city. And today I work in 22 villages with 6 centers, and not only as a doctor, but we are involved in areas of health education, vocational training, and a microcredit program for the women. From the womb to the tomb, a woman in India has to suffer all her life. When she's born, it's interesting, a little story I want to tell you. When I first delivered a village woman in a situation where I delivered them at home with only the basic amenities available, not even a bed on the floor. It was hard for me, a learning time for me being a doctor, but that's all I could do. But the moment there was a little girl delivered, everybody left that woman because they wanted a boy. This is a patriarchal society where in India a boy is given a preference over a girl. The reason for the string of children is when a woman cannot bear a boy, unfortunately she has to go through the ordeal of having So many children that I've even delivered a 16th child of the same woman. It's been an enormous struggle for me and my team. We are 17 members, but when we started, I was only one. And when Anne left, that was another struggle. There was no money, but yet I had to do it because God called me out, and I felt God called me out, because when God calls you out, He gives that peace in the heart. There were challenges, but I believe trials are not enemies of faith, but opportunities to prove God's faithfulness. He has stood with me. He's been faithful with me, along with me, and even through the challenges that I have faced, I have come out victorious, because this girl, from the womb to the tomb, she would have struggled had it not been for the intervention of international needs through the ChildLink program. Because through the ChildLink program, we are able to address not only a child, but we are able to address the community at large. That one child is able to stand with so many other little children, that whatever has happened over the years, I have great stories to tell. But the issues we've addressed are issues of abuse of children, women, the elderly, child rights, women's rights, abortions and family planning, poverty, illiteracy, and a lot of gender issue. There's a lot of domestic violence we've addressed, a lot of alcoholism that we've addressed in the form of abuse, and at large, we have been linked with the community. This program has enabled thousands of girls and women to stand up on their feet only because they were educated. Some of our girls who were grazing cattle, working in the fields, making cow dung cakes, drying them and using it as fuel, carrying loads of wood on their head just because they cook on it. Today, they're actually working as teachers with us. They're doing tuitional classes, and because through our vocational training, we've been able to teach them sewing and tailoring. They're seamstresses. They have their own businesses in their house. And the most interesting part is that the microcredit project, in 6 years that we've been doing, has enabled more than 600 women to stand up on their feet. Women who were going to commit suicide, women who were struggling for even a single morsel of food. Today, they're able to stand with other women. We have children who were little children as old as 6 and 8, and it's through the ChildLink sponsors that we've been able to help them go through to university. Education, more than anything, is the key to maintain proper health. And with proper health can a woman or a girl move forward.